From the information I have available to me, here are my thoughts. Proverbs 18:17 says this: the one who states his case first seems right. First person states his case seems so right until the other comes and examines him. Now, I want to talk a little bit about political stuff. I'm not going to be political because I think everybody feels that they have to say something about everything. Just because we have platforms like Facebook and Twitter and all these things, we feel like we have to say something. We have to come up with an answer for everything. And even I felt that pressure. Like, if something happens, what do you think about it? And I feel like I have to say something. From COVID, from the election, there's this idea we have to be first. Like, we have to give an answer first. And that's what we're most important, to be the first to say something or to get some information out there or give our opinion. I've really been learning through this season to slow down. When I give my opinion about something, I'm saying this first. From the information I have available to me, X, Y, Z. That kind of rhymed. So in other words, whatever the question is about George Floyd, if it's about the election, the claims of voter fraud, I'm going to start whatever my opinion is with this. From the information I have available to me, here's my thoughts. Because the truth is, we may not know all the things, and we don't. It's evident we don't know a lot of stuff. And the sad thing is, sometimes people won't turn back around and say, oh, I was wrong. Or I will correct that story. I will correct the narrative. Because what's out there sometimes is out there and it grows. Even when I share stuff on Facebook, I've stopped sharing stories and things because I want to make sure they're true, because I won't go back and unshare it, so to speak. And even when I hear something, it's so tempting to hear a shocking story that could sound so true, and I just spread it. Looked on my Facebook and it said, Disney has decided to leave California and move to Texas. It sounded like it could be true because a lot of businesses are leaving California to go to other places. But before I share that or even repeat that story, I want to go ahead and verify it myself. What's helped me a lot is this Proverbs chapter 18. There's a whole bunch of verses in there that's helped me in life, but there's several in this passage that helped me in the situation we're in today. Because I can have an opinion about mask wearing or non-mask wearing, but do I have all information available? Do I know enough to give my dogmatic statement? And that's what we've been doing. We've been giving these dogmatic statements, and unfortunately, this pandemic and the election and these things have really caused division among neighbors, among friends, among family members, even marriages. And I don't want to allow those things to come between me and the people I care about. I think we need to agree to disagree on some things and understand that, you know what, some of it's really not that important when it comes to eternity. I know right now we think whoever becomes president is the most important election of our lifetime. And guess what? The next one will be too. And the next one will be too. And the next one will be too. And the next one will be too. In light of eternity, do I need to lose family and friends over it? Do I need to lose my gospel voice, my witness to the world over the election, over the pandemic, over these things that ultimately I don't have control over? And the question I have to ask myself is, what is God doing? What is God doing in my life and the life of believers collectively? One of my takeaways is this world is not my home. Doesn't mean I just let go of everything and don't engage, but where's my hope? I just did a video, you can check it out, about Tony Evans' sermon, and he says this: we only have one source. We only have one source. Everything else is a resource. God is our only source. Everything else is a resource. It may be so tempting to look at my job, my security, my politics, my government, all these things that I think I can control as my source of happiness, my source of life. No, those are only resources. We only have one source, and that source is God. Let me give a couple verses that has helped me kind of navigate the season we're in now, because there's so much divisiveness. I want to stay above that, and I want to be able to have a voice of reason, voice that's not agitated or confrontational, but can hear other people's opinions and other people's thoughts. Proverbs chapter 18 verse 2 says this: a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinions. Proverbs 18:2, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinions. And a lot of times I'm meeting people that only want to express their opinions. They don't want to have a dialogue, don't want to have a conversation. They want to make a declaration. They want you to swallow the declaration. And if you don't believe what they believe, something's wrong with you, you're racist, you're this, you're that. They start calling you names. And the truth is, I don't want to engage in that. If you're not willing to have a dialogue or a conversation, hey, let's talk about something else. Let's not even bring up whatever it is that you're hot button, because I don't want to be pegged in a corner. And if we want to talk about an issue, let's have have a discussion because we can learn from each other. And that's one of the sad things coming from this. We're so divided. And listen, some of that division is due to the media, and not just the media that, the major broadcast networks. It's because of social media. It's because these people have a vested interest in you clicking on their story, their YouTube channel, their videos, whatever. They're going to give you what they think you want. The search engines are doing an amazing job of dividing the country, because if I search something and a friend of mine search something, we may get different search results, and they create these echo chambers. I'm only hearing these things from one side because that algorithm has been programmed to program me. I only see one side. I think everybody must think this way because the algorithm is teaching me this is what everybody thinks, and that's not true. I'm not saying you're a fool if that's you, but this proverb says a fool takes no pleasure in understanding. Like, no pleasure in understanding anything outside of what they already know, but only in expressing his or her own opinion. And so I just don't engage in that, because I don't want to be that fool just trying to yell at somebody else and get my point across either. So that's helpful to me. Another verse that helps to me is Proverbs 18:13, which says this: if one gives an answer before he hears, it is to his folly and shame. We're giving answers before we hear the whole story, before we hear anything really. We hear one soundbite, we hear a headline, because the truth is many of us don't read the whole article, or we don't listen to the whole speech. We let someone else give us a quote out of context, and we run with that quote. And that's, oh man, we can look at that. That's been happening for years now, because many of us, we're so busy doing other stuff, and we should be, but we don't listen to the whole thing. Because again, media has an incentive for you to click on that the title, that sensational headline. Why? Because that's how they make their money, by getting you and me to read or listen or watch what they're putting out there. And that brings me to my last verse, Proverbs 18:17. This one's been so helpful for me because I've been seeing it happen, and I don't want it to happen to me. And that's where my statement comes from. From the information I have available to me, here are my thoughts. Proverbs 18:17 says this: the one who states his case first seems right. First person states his case seems so right until the other comes and examines him. I have kids. I've been working kids for years. And especially like in after school programs, kid get into a fight, or day camps, they get into an argument. The first kid comes, tell a story. You're like, oh, wow, that's horrible. And I'm ready to go get that other kid, until the other kid comes and says, well, this happened. And you look back at the first kid and you go, did that happen? Well, yeah. Well, what had happened was, right? I've seen that happen so many times. And I think that's happening right now in our world. We hear one instance, we hear one side of the story, and we're ready to believe it. We're ready to pounce, we're ready to jump. We're getting, what's that word? Indignant. We're outraged because we heard that, but we didn't hear the other side. And the truth is, from childhood up, somehow we have known how to tell everybody else is bad, but not our bad. We tell everybody else what they did that was wrong, but not what we did was wrong. And so I learned that early working with kids. Okay, tell me what you did that was wrong. As you come to me as a first person and you're telling me the story, okay, maybe they did or did not do that, but what did you do? What was your contribution to the problem or to the situation? Because we all want to look at ourselves in a good light and portray ourselves in a beautiful light. So we have to be very careful. And I've become very careful. Just because I heard the first story doesn't mean it was right. Doesn't mean I need to jump on the bandwagon or jump on the other person. I need to wait to hear the rest of the story. My granddad used to listen to this guy named Paul Harvey in the car. And the funny thing about my granddad was this. It's not like today, like when I get in the car, hey kids, what y'all want to listen to, right? Y'all want to hear some music? He didn't ask those questions. It was his car. He was driving. So whatever he listened to, guess what? We listened to. So I listened to a whole lot of talk radio. I meant when he talk radio, it was news. And the funny thing is, we lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but he listened to the traffic stuff in Chicago. But they also played other things like Paul Harvey. And he would always tell these stories. And at the end of his stories, he would say, now you know the rest of the story. And the stories he chose to tell were stories you may have heard parts of things, or you may have heard, maybe you didn't hear the behind the scenes of it. So he told the entire story. And I'll never forget that statement. Now you know the rest of the story. We have to step back and wait to hear the rest of the story. Wait till the first person is cross-examined. That's what the NIV says, until they're cross-examined. Wait until the other side has a chance to speak up before we jump on one side or the other. And then even at that, we need to step back and say, hey, let me look at the whole thing. Let me do some critical thinking before I get my emotions all riled up, and before I start to superimpose or inject some of the other narrative into this story. I think we have this issue where we're painting with a broad brush, where we're looking at one situation and we're saying, oh, that looks like and it smells like everything that happened over here, but it may not be. So for me, I've had to be very careful not to allow my emotions, allow what other people have said and what other things have happened in the past to inject in this particular situation. I've been able to just step back. And if you ask me what I think about this or that, I'm gonna say, hey, based on the information I have available to me now, this is what I believe, because I could be wrong. And if we were all willing to be humble enough to do that, I think we would have more peace, more understanding, and even as believers, our testimony would have more light to it, so to speak. I think people may be able to hear us more, listen more, if we're able to step back and wait to hear the rest of the story. Proverbs 18:17, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. And I pray we be people who are willing to examine ourselves, our own motives, our words, situations, and examine them according to Scripture. And I know we're living in a very divisive time, but the question for me, and hopefully for you, is how can we choose to be salt and light? How can we choose to be salt and light to this world that definitely needs some salt and definitely needs some light? And we've been called to be that light. Hopefully that's helpful to you. It's been very helpful for me. Proverbs chapter 18, read through it and see what your thoughts are. Please leave some of your thoughts in the comments. And again, I would love to have a dialogue, but I do not want to have an argument. So if you're that foolish person that just wants to not looking for understanding, but just want to hear your own self talk, then you may want to go somewhere else. Was that nice enough to say? I think it was. Hey, thanks for watching, and I pray that we will be salt and light in this world, because this world definitely needs a lot of salt and a lot of light.